Let's look at Abraham first. Let's see what the benefit is of a man who has pitched his tent, put his house towards the house of God. What does that look like? Well, it comes in handy when you're trying to make a decision in your life. On one hand, he could go this way, he could go this way. So what does that look like? I want you to notice this. Not one time does God, and I read this multiple times this week, I noticed this. First time in my life I've noticed this. Not one time did I read that God warned Abram about Sodom and Gomorrah. The most wicked place on the planet at that time and maybe throughout history, and not one time does God say to him, Abram, you look over there, don't even think about going in that direction. Not one time. The decision is about to be made about a major move for Abram. And not one time does God even talk to him or warn him about the most immoral place on the planet. That is right there. You could say this, one of the options for him is over here. Not one time does he even warn him. How is that possible? I believe it's because God knew Abram. I believe God knew Abram and he knew how he would choose. He knew what was in him. But Abram also knew some things about God. Let me put it in a little story form for you. Recently, I was driving, I was in Las Vegas, going through Las Vegas. And Linda was with Linda and Mark. Mark was there for a Home Builders Association expo type thing. So we were driving down the Las Vegas Strip. And I was in the back seat. And I remember looking out, and this is the first sign I remember seeing anyway. There was a sign that was about as big as this building. That was huge sign. Lit up sign that said, "Welcome to Sin City." Welcome to Sin City. And this is the truth, what I'm getting ready to tell you. Not one time when we were driving down that strip or when I was in that city, not one time did God say to me, Eddie, don't you even dare think about looking at that. Don't you even dare think about going into that place. And don't you even dare think about going to that show. And I'm telling you, I'll jerk your tail right out of that church. You won't be a pastor anymore if you do that. I'll tell Larry King Live on you if you do that. Geraldo at large will be all over you if you do that. You know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Not one time did God warn me. At the same time, not one time was I tempted with anything in that city. I'm telling you the truth. Not one time did I feel like, man, I got to talk to God. That wasn't a good thought. Or that wasn't a good... Not one time. Now, in contrast, I've had many people over the 30 years since Dr. Cole prophesied over me and I started to aim towards that target of ministry for my life. I've had many people over the years, could say hundreds over the years, say to me, Pastor Eddie, you know, when I was kind of heading towards that, and whatever it is in their life, Sin City represents for their life, or that journey would be that story of deed for their life. You know, Pastor Eddie, even as I started to go even that direction, or even thought, you know, in a few weeks I'm going to be in that neighborhood or in that place or in that opportunity. My wife's leaving town. I'm going to be home alone. Now, in advance, I started to have God speak to me and start to warn me. This is what people say to me. God started to encourage me. God started to say to me, you know, you need to get an accountability partner. You need to confess to them. You need to talk to them. You're starting to feel some pull here. And I'll say to them, well, why do you think it is that God started to challenge you? Why do you think it is God started to warn you? God started to remind you of the journey and the progress you made and not to go back. Why do you think God did that? Most all the time they say to me, you know, Pastor, my compass has always had that pull towards. God knows you. And God knows two men starting in the exact same location, drawn in two different ways. Can I have the worship team come up, please? Two compasses. I guess we could call this message, I've entitled this message, The Tale of Two Compasses, but the truth is, I think we should have called the message, The Tale of Two Men and the Compasses That Guided Their Lives. The tale of two men and the compasses that guided their lives. See, there's what I believe is the benefit of really seeking God, serving God, is what I call the circle of God's will. See, there's two lines of thinking. There's two lines of thinking. There's the target, that my life is, there's a target, and somewhere out there is a destiny. And we use the word destiny. We love the word destiny. But that there's a point of destiny, that if I don't hit that point of destiny, that my life doesn't count, that I'm off. In contrast, we see that Abraham lived in this place, what I would call the circle of God's will, to the point where he could make a decision that he's going to go this way, and God's okay with that. And he could go this way with his life, and God's okay with that. Now, which is it? I say it's both. I say there's times in your life where God will put a target before you and say, man of God, woman of God, this is something I need you to do. Yeah. I need you to head towards ministry, or I need you to head towards business. I need you to do that. I need you to give this money in the offering. I need you to go to England and be a missionary. I need you to start a church. There'll be times that there is a target that God does put before you. Example would be starting Champion Life Church, 2004. God said to us, Tammy and I, plant me a church in the desert. The sign said, desert cities. So what's the target? The bullseye is the desert cities. What is the circle of God's will? You know what? When we got here and we started to plant this church and to pray and go around this valley seeking God, where exactly? What is the point, the focal point for us to plant this church? You know what? We got no direction. I mean, it's like, God, you tell us to go there, then you stop talking? What's up with that? No, God had already given us direction. What was the bullseye? The Coachella Valley, desert cities. So when we started to seek God, should we put the church here? This building's available. It was almost as if he said, well, if you put the church there, then I would do this, this, and this. Well, what do you think about putting it here? And we could have it on Sunday night, and we could do this, and it's real cheap. Well, then I would do this, this, and this. You know, we quickly concluded, once you know the target of God's will, then the circle of God's will. You know what we conclude, church? We are blessed in this valley wherever we are. Why? Because we're in the circle of God's will.